We've achieved what some might call historic progress. Today, for the first time in U.S. history, our national debt has hit an all-time high of $35 trillion. That's a staggering $14,000 for every American. Yes, $35 trillion. We did it. Congratulations. But let's put this in perspective. How serious is this issue? It's huge, absolutely enormous. Ladies and gentlemen, how does it feel to be living on the edge of a bubble just before it bursts? Since the days of the Great Recession, our leaders have taken unprecedented measures to keep our faltering economy afloat. Some argue that the economy isn't in the best shape. From your standpoint, how does the US economy compare to other advanced economies with central banks? Well, as someone who participates in numerous international discussions as part of my job, the narrative for the past 2 years has been the exceptional performance of the US economy. That's no secret. The US economy has indeed done remarkably well. However, the Federal Reserve has created trillions upon trillions of dollars out of thin air and injected them into the financial system. Meanwhile, our politicians in Washington have embarked on the most massive debt spree in history, and as a result, our national debt has soared to terrifying levels. On Monday, our national debt hit $35 trillion, and even the New York Times acknowledges that it's grown faster than many economists had anticipated. The storm clouds are gathering, and an epic crisis looms over the future of our nation. Before going further, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like below this video if you enjoy. Our massive and unsustainable national debt stands as the most significant long-term threat to our economic prosperity and national security, in my opinion. The House Budget Committee recently released some alarming figures highlighting how rapidly our debt has been increasing. $196 billion in new debt per month, $6.4 billion per day, $268 million per hour, $4.5 million per minute, and $74,400 per second. That third number, $268 million being added to our debt every hour, really hits hard. It's money stolen from future generations of Americans every single hour, and yet hardly anyone seems to care. We are, quite literally, committing national suicide. Is it fair to say you flooded the system with money? Yes, that's exactly what we did. When the government borrows money that must be repaid later, we're sacrificing future prosperity for the sake of enjoying more prosperity now. We were $10 trillion in debt when Barack Obama took office, and now we've ballooned to $35 trillion. In doing so, we've destroyed the bright future that was supposed to belong to our children and grandchildren. This relentless borrowing has allowed us to maintain a standard of living far beyond what we actually deserve. But we've reached a point where economic conditions are steadily worsening, even as the government continues to pile up mountains of new debt. We are teetering on the brink of a debt crisis in the United States. Never before have we faced a recession with this level of debt. It's unprecedented. So what happens when we hit a recession? Our budget deficits are already sky high, even more so than they typically are during a recession. Just imagine where they'll go from here. We are in uncharted, extremely dangerous territory, and yet no one seems willing to acknowledge it, likely because there's no easy solution. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, homelessness in the U.S. has been rising by about 10% annually since the pandemic ended. By the end of 2023, the U.S. reached its highest reported level of homelessness since tracking began in 2007, with over 653,000 Americans without a home when the survey was conducted. This increase spans all demographics, with families with children seeing the sharpest rise, nearly 16% higher than in previous years. Kevin, we're here in a weekly rate hotel where you're living with your 4 kids as a single dad. Tell us about your situation. Well, my kids have spent their birthdays in this van. My daughter's birthday is next month, and I'll be damned if we spend it in the van again. I don't want to spend Christmas in a van either. It's hard. There's also a growing concern about the number of young people living on the streets, struggling to survive. According to the same report, the 4 states facing the most significant homelessness issues are California, New York, Florida, and Washington. New Hampshire and New Mexico saw the largest increases in homeless populations, with rises of 52% and 50%, respectively. New York followed closely, with homelessness increasing by 39% since the last survey. Alongside the rise in homelessness, poverty and hunger are also escalating across the nation. In 2023, over 12% of Americans were living below the poverty line, and nearly 13% reported not having enough to eat. Ann Oliver, CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, noted that more people are becoming homeless for the first time. This increase is due to individuals losing their homes more quickly, leaving them with nowhere to go but the streets. Our national debt has ballooned from $10 trillion to $35 trillion since Barack Obama first took office, yet our economy continues to crumble. This represents a colossal failure of historic proportions. Despite accumulating the largest amount of debt in world history, most Americans are still struggling, and the massive debt has only exacerbated the cost of living crisis. Today, there are 6 major U.S. cities where earning around $200,000 a year only qualifies you for a middle-class lifestyle. San Francisco tops the list, where, under Pew Research's definition, a family earning more than $250,000 annually is still considered middle class. Washington, D.C. follows closely behind, where a household bringing in more than $230,000 would fall into the middle class bracket. In Seattle, a household could earn as much as $214,000 per year and still be classified as middle income. Boston families earning over $200,000 could also be considered middle class. In New York City, with its high cost of living, a family making $183,000 per year would still be within the middle class range. And in Los Angeles, households earning $175,000 annually would also be classified as middle class. However, the vast majority of Americans will never make $200,000 a year. Most are barely getting by. A recent survey found that 71% of U.S. adults are stressed about their ability to afford everyday expenses. Americans most frequently spend money on groceries, phone bills, utilities, gasoline, rent, and mortgage payments. Grocery bills frustrate Americans more than any other regular expense, followed by utilities, rent or mortgage payments, gasoline, and insurance payments. Unsurprisingly, younger generations are feeling the effects of inflation the hardest. Financial stress levels are highest among millennials, 77%, followed by Generation Z, 75%, and Generation X, 74%. Baby boomers reported experiencing the least financial stress. Shares of the Ford Motor Company recently nosedived by 18% in a single day following highly disappointing earnings results. Although Ford, which managed to avoid bankruptcy during the 2008 to 2009 crisis, is far from facing such a catastrophe now, this sharp decline serves as a stark reminder of the uphill battle automakers face for the rest of the year. As conditions worsen in the second half of this year and beyond, our leaders will likely try to stabilize the situation by doubling down on their current strategies. However, these efforts will only exacerbate the cost of living crisis and deepen our long-term issues. In fact, those long-term problems are quickly becoming immediate concerns. The entire system is shaking with tremors, and our bubble economy is slowly but surely heading toward an inevitable collapse. Thank you for watching.